Military reservists sent to fight were quickly followed by conscripts, students, men with no combat experience. Many died on the battlefield. Others chose to desert.
And to Putin, Russia must fight until it wins. And to him, sacrifices of these soldiers are just a bare necessity.
While criminal elites sip champagne and talk about restoring the empire, thousands of Russian troops are trapped in a war they no longer believe in. Cold, hungry, and wounded, they are asking one question: why are we still here? Today, we'll uncover the growing frustration inside Russia's military ranks. From forced conscription to battlefield despair, you'll hear the voices that Russia tries to silence. Because when soldiers start asking the question, why are we still fighting? That means the real battle isn't just with Ukraine, it's with the truth. Let's rewind to early 2022, when the invasion first began. Back then, Russian soldiers were told they were part of something historic. Vladimir Putin framed the war as a noble mission to protect Russian-speaking populations, to stop NATO's expansion, and to reclaim land he called historically Russian. He spoke of defending the motherland, restoring pride, and standing up to the hostile West. Many troops believed him. They signed up thinking they were protecting their country, fighting for a cause that mattered. Some saw it as a chance to serve with honor. Others saw it as a way to defend their families from what they were told was an existential threat. But that belief didn't last. As the months dragged on, the promises began to unravel. Soldiers arrived in Ukraine expecting to be welcomed as liberators, only to face fierce resistance from locals who saw them as invaders. The special military operation turned into a brutal, grinding war. Instead of swift victories, they were met with ambushes, drone strikes, and endless shelling. The mission that once felt righteous started to look like a lie. By 2023, the cracks were showing. Putin continued to deliver speeches filled with patriotic slogans, insisting that Ukraine was part of Russia's destiny and that victory was just around the corner. He pointed to small territorial gains in places like Donetsk as proof of progress, urging Russians to stay united and proud. But for the men on the ground, those gains felt meaningless. They were fighting for villages that changed hands every few weeks, losing friends for patches of land that weren't worth the blood that was spilled. And now, in 2025, the disconnect between Putin's words and the reality on the battlefield is impossible to ignore. Over 1 million Russian troops have been killed or wounded since the war began, with around 250,000 confirmed dead. That's not just a number. It's a generation of sons, brothers, and fathers lost. Families across Russia are grieving, and many are asking, what was all this suffering for? The illusion of purpose has collapsed. What began as a mission wrapped in national pride has become a slow bleed of morale and manpower. Putin's speeches now sound detached, recycled from the years past, offering no real answers. His insistence that Russia is winning feels like a cruel joke to those who have watched their units vanish in failed offenses. The war, once sold as a defining moment for Russia, now looks like a disaster that's spiraling out of control. And the soldiers know it. They've lived the cost. They've seen the gap between the Kremlin's vision and the mud-soaked reality of the front lines. What started with belief has ended with bitterness. The question they're asking now isn't how to win, it's why they were sent in the first place. Russian troops are worn down. And more than anything, they're tired of fighting a war that feels pointless. A secure poll shared earlier this year revealed that most soldiers no longer believe victory is possible. They just want it to end. While they risk their lives, they hear about Moscow's elite living in comfort, untouched by the war. That contrast, it stings. It makes them feel like pawns in a game they never agreed to play. A game where the rules keep changing and the goals keep slipping away. That bitterness only grows when they look around and see who's actually doing the fighting. Most of the men on the front line aren't from Moscow or St. Petersburg. They're from places like Dagestan, Buryatia, and small villages scattered across Siberia. These poorer regions carry the weight of the war, suffering the highest casualties, while wealthier areas stay mostly untouched. It's not hard to feel used when the people furthest from power are the ones paying the highest price for its decisions. And that divide isn't just about geography either. It shows up in how the war is being run. Soldiers describe commanders who seem distant and disconnected, sending them into battle without enough ammo or gear or backup. One report from Business Insider estimated daily losses at over 1,000 during heavy fighting. That kind of bloodshed drains not just units, but morale. Troops start questioning everything. They're told they're fighting for Russia's future, but all they see is destruction. Promises of progress don't really match the reality they face, and that doubt makes every order harder to follow. Younger conscripts feel this even more. They clash with older officers who still rely on outdated Soviet-style tactics, throwing waves after waves of men into open assaults instead of adapting to smarter strategies. These younger soldiers know there are better ways to fight, but their ideas are ignored. This leaves them feeling powerless, stuck under leadership that doesn't seem to value their lives or listen to their voices. And that frustration only deepens when you look at the conditions that they're living in. Many soldiers don't even have proper boots or bulletproof vests. Food is often spoiled or in short supply, and medical help is slow to arrive. Some injuries that could be treated end up killing men because help comes too late. Corruption in the supply chain is everywhere. Supplies meant for the front are stolen or sold off, leaving troops with broken gear or nothing at all. It's not just uncomfortable, it's dangerous. And the longer they're out there, the worse it gets. Deployments stretch on for months, sometimes a full year with no break. The constant pressure wears men down. They become exhausted, careless, and more likely to make mistakes. Casualties keep piling up. According to NBC, by August of 2025, Russia's total losses were around 1 million, with around 250,000 killed. These aren't just numbers. They're friends lost to drones, shells, and traps. It's an absolute mess on the front lines, and Russian soldiers are caught smack dab in the middle of it. That lack of support turns frustration into anger, making soldiers feel like they're fighting their own system as much as the enemy. And that sense of being abandoned isn't just a feeling, it's a reality they live with every day. Even in death, dignity is stripped away. Reports speak of mobile crematoria following units, used to quietly burn bodies and keep the official death count low. Soldiers say this turns their fallen comrades into statistics the state can hide. For many, it's the final insult. Their lives are spent cheaply, and even in death, they're denied respect. But as brutal as the physical pain that comes with war is, the mental toll cuts even deeper. Constant shelling shakes the ground, day and night. The sound of explosions never stops, making sleep nearly impossible. Soldiers live surrounded by death, bodies in trenches, screams that never leave their minds. By mid-2025, PTSD was everywhere. Nightmares, panic attacks, and flashbacks hit without warning. The fear of the next attack keeps them on edge, with no chance to relax or feel safe. And now there's a new kind of fear. Soldiers call it dronophobia. Ukrainian drones buzz overhead non-stop, scouting positions, dropping explosives, or guiding deadly artillery. There's no hiding from them. Reports from the front line say drones now cause most of the deaths. Squads are wiped out before they even see the enemy. Men freeze at the sound, scanning the skies constantly. They can't sleep or eat without fear. Every patrol, every supply run feels like a gamble. It's not just the enemy they're fighting, it's an invisible force that's always watching. There's no real support for any of it. No counselors, no trauma medics, just the same empty advice to push through. But that doesn't work when you're watching friends die every single day. That sense of helplessness grows when they see the technology gap. Ukrainian forces use Western artillery, precision rockets, and tools that jam Russian communications. Russian soldiers say their radios cut out during key moments, leaving them blind to orders or warnings. They watch as Western drones and missiles hit targets with deadly accuracy, while their own weapons fall short. Every fight feels unfair, like they're playing a losing game. All of this leaves soldiers feeling trapped. They're not just fighting the enemy, they're battling their own minds. It's no wonder that hopelessness has been spreading through the ranks. The nonstop threat of death keeps their minds in survival mode. The soldiers see no end to the war, just more orders to run into danger. Many feel like cannon fodder sent into battles with no real chance. Perhaps this is the part of the reason why, so far, over 50,000 soldiers have deserted, according to reports, choosing punishment over another day on the front lines. Others surrendered to Ukrainian forces, believing captivity was better than dying in a war that no longer made sense. If you're worried about how AI is changing everything, jobs, industries, education, even the economy, well, you're not alone. According to a Rutgers University report, 7 in 10 US workers say they're very, or somewhat, concerned about employers using AI in decision-making. 3 in 10 are worried about their job being eliminated by AI. Even experts agree. Many studies say that by the 2030s, 30% of jobs will be automated by AI, and 44% of workers replaced. That means you have to pay attention if you want to avoid becoming a victim. That's why we recently made a YouTube video that breaks down what's actually happening behind the scenes and how people are preparing, not just to survive, but to benefit from the AI revolution. And this isn't about becoming a coder or building the next ChatGPT. It's about understanding where the real leverage is as AI evolves, and how normal people are using it to build safer career paths right now. If you're feeling uncertain about the future, or you're just curious about what your options are, watch that video here on YouTube by clicking on the link in the description or on the card on your screen. When emotions run high, the financial strain makes things worse. Soldiers often wait months for their pay, and when payments do arrive, they're smaller than expected or missing altogether. Inflation back home eats away at whatever little they manage to send. Families struggle to afford food, pay rent, or cover basic needs, all while their loved ones are fighting in a war that seems to give nothing back. Promises of bonuses or compensation for injuries are rarely fulfilled, leaving soldiers feeling used and forgotten. The pressure from home adds another layer of pain that soldiers can't escape. Letters from wives and mothers arrive with pleas to come back, filled with stories of families struggling without them. These messages don't just tug at their hearts, they weigh them down. Soldiers read about children growing up without fathers, homes falling apart, and loved ones barely holding on. In May of 2025, families quietly protested during Victory Day, holding signs that asked for their sons and husbands to return. That quiet resistance reached the front lines, deepening the guilt and sorrow already hanging over the troops. All of this leads to something deeper: a loss of belief in the mission itself. This creates doubt in the minds of the soldiers, and that doubt has slipped back home. And with these doubts is defiance that is starting to rise up in the fold. We're beginning to see pushback from families that are becoming a force the Kremlin can't ignore. In June of 2025, small groups of mothers and wives gathered across Russian cities, holding signs and sharing stories of missing sons and husbands. These protests are often shut down quickly, but the message still spreads. Online platforms carry their voices further, turning grief into pressure. Soldiers on the front lines read these posts, and it pulls at them. They're already worn down, and now they're reminded of the lives waiting for them back home. Lives that are unraveling in their absence. This unrest doesn't stay in the streets. It reaches the trenches, where resistance takes shape in quiet acts and open defiance. Some soldiers sabotage missions, dragging their feet or misfiring just enough to avoid punishment. Others refuse orders outright, risking court-martials. Videos have surfaced showing troops venting about corruption, officers hoarding food, selling gear, or ignoring supply requests. Letters sent home describe the chaos, with men pleading for help to escape. Right now, Telegram channels have become a lifeline for these voices, filled with stories of unpaid wages, broken equipment, and missions that feel like suicide runs. But not all resistance is met with silence. Some soldiers face brutal retaliation from their own side. Footage from this year shows men accused of desertion tied up and left exposed to Ukrainian drones, a grim punishment nicknamed the Baba Yaga sacrifice. These acts aren't isolated. They're part of a pattern meant to scare others into staying. Investigations this year uncovered how missing soldiers are often labeled as deserters, allowing the military to avoid reporting real casualties. Families are denied closure, and troops see firsthand how easily their lives can be erased or rewritten. It's a message that loyalty doesn't guarantee dignity. To further keep troops in line, the Kremlin has revived tactics from the Soviet era. Barrier units now stand behind frontline forces, tasked with stopping retreats, sometimes by force. These internal threats make soldiers feel like they're fighting two enemies, the one in front of them and the one behind. Trust breaks down, and the army starts to fracture from within. As you might imagine, the consequences of this are now showing on the battlefield. Tired, unmotivated soldiers hesitate during attacks, retreat early, or fail to hold ground. In places like Donetsk, Russian advances have slowed despite heavy investment. Gaps in the lines appear more often, and commanders push harder, demanding results that exhausted troops can't deliver. That pressure only deepens frustration, creating a cycle that's hard to escape. With regular troops exhausted, morale collapsing, and casualties soaring, the Kremlin has now turned to foreign fighters, mercenaries, and prisoners to keep the front lines from falling apart. It's a desperate move, and it's not going unnoticed. Inside Russia, many see it as a national embarrassment. The country that once claimed to be a global superpower is now leaning on outsiders to fight a war it promised would be quick and decisive. One of the most glaring examples is the deal with North Korea. Earlier this year, Russia brought in over 10,000 North Korean troops to help push back Ukrainian advances in places like Kursk. These soldiers were thrown into unfamiliar terrain with little training and poor equipment. Within weeks, thousands of them were dead. Reports from the front lines say they were used in mass assaults, sent straight into fortified zones where they were cut down before they even saw the enemy. It's a brutal tactic, one that Russian troops have seen before and now watch repeated with foreign bodies. And now North Korea is about to send another 30,000 troops because of the need that Putin has. For many, it's a shameful chapter. Putin once said Ukraine would be steamrolled in days. Now he's relying on soldiers from Pyongyang to hold the line. But it's not just North Koreans. Fighters from over 100 countries have been recruited, including men from Africa, Central Asia, and the Middle East. Many are promised money, citizenship, or safety. What they get is chaos. Ukrainian forces have captured hundreds of these mercenaries, and Russia refuses to include them in prisoner exchanges. To Moscow, they're disposable. That message isn't lost on Russian troops, who now fight alongside men they don't trust, in a war they no longer believe in. The use of prisoners is another sign of how far things have fallen. Convicts are often offered freedom if they survive 6 months on the field. These men are sent to the bloodiest battles, often with no gear and no training. They're used as shock troops, thrown into enemy fire to test defenses. Regular soldiers see this and feel disgusted. They signed up to serve their country, not to fight beside criminals pulled out of jail. It's another blow to morale, another reason why the army feels so broken. And then there's the Wagner Group. Once seen as Russia's elite fighting force, Wagner mercenaries were feared and respected. But that changed after their failed mutiny in 2023. Led by Yevgeny Prigozhin, Wagner marched towards Moscow, accusing top generals of corruption and incompetence. For a moment, it looked like a turning point, but the rebellion was crushed, and Prigozhin was killed in a plane explosion just 2 months later. His death sent a clear message. Challenge the Kremlin, and you will not survive. Since then, Wagner has been gutted. Many of its fighters were absorbed into the regular army or reassigned to new units under tighter control, but the loyalty is gone. Wagner mercenaries who once fought with pride now feel betrayed. They talk about being used, discarded, and silenced. Some have refused new contracts. Others have leaked footage and messages showing the chaos inside their ranks. The fear runs deep, not just among Wagner veterans, but among top generals who saw what happened to Prigozhin and now worry they could be next. The fear is spreading. Even Putin's own commanders are more cautious, more paranoid. Trust between units is fading. The divide between Kremlin leadership and battlefield reality is growing wider by the day. Soldiers see the cracks. They hear the rumors. And they know that loyalty doesn't guarantee safety anymore. The result is a fractured force. Russian troops are tired, confused, and angry. They're watching foreign fighters die in droves, prisoners thrown into hopeless missions, and mercenaries turned against their own leaders. They're seeing generals fall from grace, alliances shift, and promises break. The war feels less like a mission and more like a mess, one that's being held together by fear and propaganda. Putin may still speak of unity and victory, but the ground tells a different story. The reliance on outsiders, the collapse of Wagner, and the growing distrust among commanders all point to a system that is struggling to survive. Russian soldiers are sick of the war, and now they're surrounded by signs that even their leaders don't know how to end it. The mighty army that was supposed to crush Ukraine is now patching holes with foreign bodies and broken promises. And for the men still in the trenches, that's not just disappointing, it's a warning that the worst may still be ahead. Meanwhile, as Russia scrambles to hold its lines with foreign fighters and worn-out troops, Ukraine is pushing forward with new energy. Ukrainian forces are taking advantage of Russia's fatigue, launching fresh offenses in key areas. Their soldiers are motivated, focused, and fighting with purpose. They know exactly what they're defending. It's their homes, their families, and their freedom. That kind of passion can't be faked. It's the difference between surviving and winning. Ukrainian troops are reclaiming ground that was lost months ago, inch by inch, with determination that's hard to match. They're not just holding the line, they're pushing it back. This contrast is becoming more obvious every day. While Russian soldiers question why they're even there, Ukrainian fighters are digging in and refusing to back down. They're supported by their people, cheered on by families who believe in this cause. That unity gives them strength. Meanwhile, Russia's forces are fractured. They're tired, confused, and surrounded by mercenaries and prisoners who don't care about the mission. It's a broken system trying to fight a united one, and it's starting to show. But even with all this pressure, Putin refuses to back off. He won't call a truce. He won't agree to peace. At the recent Alaska summit with Donald Trump, he rejected every offer that could have ended the war. Instead of compromise, he demanded more land and more control. He ignored the suffering of his own soldiers and acted like the war was still going according to plan. His refusal to accept reality has turned into something darker. A man addicted to war, chasing victory no matter the cost. And it's not just the soldiers who are fed up. Back home, the Russian people are growing restless. What once felt like a patriotic mission has turned into a long, painful burden. Russia's economy is no longer built to support its people, it's built to feed the war. Military spending now takes up nearly half of the national budget, and civilian needs are pushed aside. Factories that once made household goods now produce weapons. Resources that could go to schools or hospitals are now being poured into the front lines. The country is running like a war machine, and that machine is grinding down its own citizens. With sanctions cutting off trade and oil prices dropping, there's less money coming in and more being burned up in the battle. On the ground, people are suffering. Inflation is high, jobs are disappearing, and the future looks bleak. Many Russians now believe the country can only survive by staying in a constant state of war. That's not strength, it's a collapse in slow motion, and Putin won't stop. He won't listen to the voices calling for peace. He won't face the truth that his war has broken the very nation he claims to protect. This refusal to change course is dangerous. It's not just stubborn, it's reckless. This kind of obsession is dangerous. History shows what happens when leaders lose touch with their armies. In World War I, Russia's Tsar, Nicholas II, ignored the suffering of his troops, which led to a revolution that ended his rule. In Vietnam, South Vietnamese generals turned against their own president when they saw that the war was lost. Even in recent years, coups have happened in countries like Mali and Sudan, where soldiers felt betrayed by their leaders. When morale collapses and trust disappears, uprisings become possible. Ukraine sees this weakness and keeps pressing forward. Their fighters are not just winning battles, they're winning hearts. They're showing the world what it means to fight for something real. And as Russia continues to bleed, the question grows louder. How long can Putin hold on before his own army turns against him? The war is no longer just about land. It's about belief. And right now, Ukraine has it. Russia doesn't. The question now isn't how long Ukraine can resist. It's how long Russia's own troops will keep fighting. If morale keeps slipping and defiance keeps spreading, the war could stall from within. The soldiers in the trenches, exhausted and disillusioned, may hold the final lever. Their quiet refusal to keep pushing forward could become the momentum that forces Russia to confront the limits of its ambition, not through defeat on the battlefield, but through collapse from the inside. The outcome won't be decided by speeches or strategy alone. It'll come down to the will of the men still holding rifles in muddy fields. And that will is fading fast.